That kind
Hello, I'd
of
like to remind you I was introduced into this podcast as the man that reads all of the light novels from Japan. All of the horrific and terrible and miserable things.
Welcome to That Japanese Thing. Today we're talking about Trigun, as well as some Japanese news stories, including Ghibli controversies, as well as some anime that took surprisingly long to air a single season. My name's Chris. Today with me is Yesh and Dylan. Welcome, guys. How you doing?
hey.
Hello.
I'm good. Yesh, why don't you start us off with our little Ghibli Park problem?
Indeed. So from the 22nd of February onwards, there have been a number of images uploaded to social media showing individuals doing lewd acts and or taking lewd pictures of the figures and figurines in the Studio Ghibli Park, which is a place where they have placed some of the images from their movies and models and figurines from their movies so that people can enjoy basically walking through the history of the studio. However, recently the number of images of people doing unusual and terrible things to these figurines has gone up quite rapidly. Apparently, this has been happening for some time that people have done this sort of thing, but the relative occurrence of it has increased quite a bit since February 22nd. Studio Ghibli appears to have a stance of not making any comments with regards to such things. As such, they have no public comment. But the occurrence has become so regular and so popular, I suppose, online, that there has been a response from Hideaki Omura, the governor of the Aichi prefecture, who suggested that the displays are there so that everyone, from children to adults, can immerse themselves in the works of Studio Ghibli, and it's extremely unpleasant for photos such as these to be uploaded to social media. Since he has made these comments, the number of security guards in the area, perhaps not employed by Studio Ghibli, has increased, and the occurrence of said images has gone down. Part of the reason why there was a bit of an uproar online about it is because many of these figurines and figures represent younger people, mostly between the ages of 14 and 17. And in one particular case of Marnie, she is age 12.
So since this is the absolute first time we've recorded this, and I, for some reason just happened to have this open, I gotta say some of the images are pretty funny. Some are pretty bad, obviously, but some of them are pretty creative in what they've done with the ghost face thing from Spirited Away.
I'm sure that it was largely done with the intent of goofing off rather than any particular lust or anything. But still, when you consider how much Studio Ghibli probably draws for Japan as a whole for tourism, slash the fact that it's got some cultural impact, it's kind of like I'm sure the Americans would not be happy with pictures of guys pissing on the Statue of Liberty or something.
It's not the same thing. It's like someone.
Admittedly, not
it's
the
like
same
someone
thing.
peeing on a guy wearing a goofy costume. That's basically the equivalent, right? I mean, I don't think it's not
like
that
this...
serious, but yeah. I mean,
certainly, it's not intended to be
irresponsible,
serious.
But
But you can understand why they would be like negative about such things.
Sure, it's like a children's park. People should probably not do that sort of thing around children, in the very least.
And for a second bit of news, Plex Streaming has come to an agreement with AMC Networks to stream High Dive, an anime channel, 24/7 across their network. This opens up viewing anime anytime, anywhere, as long as you have an internet connection and a device that can use Plex. Any smart TV, phone, or computer can now grant you access to anime, even if you don't have your collection around you or anything of that sort. High Dive Network has access to quite a few significantly good anime in their streaming platform. So it's actually quite an interesting deal. Plex being so prevalent amongst smart devices, this could actually open up anime to quite a lot of people. So I view this as an absolute win. Amongst the anime that they will be streaming, definitely, are Kokoro Connect, Clannad, Land of the Lustrous, Nanan Biori, Beyond the Boundary, My Teen Romantic Comedy Snafu, Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, Golden Time, and The Pet of Sakuroso. But also, amongst the anime that they could stream in the future are Made in Abyss, Akame ga Kill, Food Wars, Shokugeki no Soma, and Parasite the Maxim.
So I did look it up again, and they're not the people who own the chain of
The movie
theaters.
theaters. Correct, yeah.
What they do, they are the people that have made, I believe, the comically bad BBC adaptations into American versions of stuff.
Many of the versions of shows from the BBC that suddenly get an American counterpart.
Yeah. And I think they were also responsible for like the Arrowverse initially, but I could be wrong.
It's possible that they are related.
Yeah.
I know that there's a specific channel involved with that, but I don't know if AMC owns them.
So I don't know what they're planning to do with it, right? That would be my only concern with this, because I think some of the stuff they did, these also might be the guys that canceled Star Trek Enterprise.
They are definitely.
right,
It is definitely this company.
Yeah.
But the problem is, or rather the advantage is, I don't think AMC is managing this per se. They bought the company Sentai Filmworks, and Sentai Filmworks is making the deal. They are under the AMC umbrella, but it looks like the corporate side is kind of just like hand waving the anime side of the company.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a limited amount that they could do in terms of damage to the anime industry. But it would be real interesting if they try to make like what is that like really young adult channel called again? That always has like the like with Supergirl and those sort of places.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember the name of the channel.
But imagine like they make like YA, like American themed anime. That would be super interesting to watch. Probably be like a complete train wreck, but be super interesting to watch. Okay. Anything else, Yash?
No, those are my two stories.
And reporting back to a story that I've been keeping track of here.
The CW.
CW, thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking. Uncle from Another World. Finally finished airing.
And it was worth the wait.
How much longer did it take? It took 9 months, I think, in total.
I think it only took an additional 3 months because it was a split season.
No, but so they didn't finish the season, right? And then they took a season off. And then they finished up to episode 12. And this is now the next season. So it's at least 2 seasons after it was supposed to initially finish airing, right?
Yes, yeah. It did delay by a fair bit.
Okay, so
but
maybe
I
it's
do
only
know that
7
the
months.
original,
Or
the original intent was to
6
have
months.
a split core season.
Oh, okay.
So we were always going to have a bit of a break, but it ended 2 episodes earlier than it should have.
I gotta say it was good to... I kind of didn't even really notice that it hadn't ended properly, I guess. But it was nice to have like a... It felt like a bonus OVA, really, that had just come out out of nowhere.
Yes, yeah. I suppose it did feel like that. It just suddenly there was more content.
Oh, there's another episode. Oh, it's just more of the story. I guess they just never really finished it. I never noticed. Because it kind of just felt like maybe they were just leaving the season on a cliffhanger. and they pick up from there. But I guess it doesn't make sense to end the series in the middle of the boss fight. Although that would be pretty ballsy. I kind of like that idea. Especially in this show, where it's just, like the uncle could be, oh yeah, I'll finish the story some other time. Let's go make coffee. But yeah, finally it's finished airing. So if you haven't started watching it, now you can watch the entire season from beginning to end. Definitely worth watching as well. Although you will notice animation quality changed subtly at a point where various people were obviously fired. New people were hired. So, a lot of interesting stuff happened behind the scenes in this series. Going to our main topic now, we're talking about Trigun. We're going to be talking about Trigun Stampede, and there's going to be quite a lot of comparing it to the original, I think. We sat down and we watched 7 episodes of it. Together on a couch, and I don't know have you guys watched any more of it than that?
No.
I watched episode 8, and I was gonna watch episode 9 literally just before this cast. But I have not watched episode 9.
Okay, so we're not gonna finish it together then.
We can finish it together if you want. I had held off until we watched up to 7.
Okay, follow.
Right, okay. So there's going to be a split opinion on this, I think. Not maybe not split evenly, really. But yeah. So it was a bit torturous for me watching those 7 episodes in a row, I think. Obviously fun to have you guys over and watch them, so that was a nice thing to do.
Mm.
We had some Korean food, which was a bit weird. And then yeah, we started off. We watched the first episode of season 3 of Picard just to give ourselves like a base bottom badness rating, right? So we knew things. We knew we wouldn't be comparing it to something that was good, right? So we weren't coming in with any preconceived notions of it being bad, right? By comparison.
Was that the reason, or was
That's
it that
why
you
I did
wanted
it. Yeah.
you wanted company in your misery?
I mean, I
Was
always
that
want company in my misery. That's just a background kind of imperative, right? But the reason I did make Yash watch that episode was just so we were all coming from like a similar kind of palate cleansed, previous thing that we had watched.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't any, like everyone's mood would be the same as we dove into the series. That was my idea anyway.
As only a pump action phaser could do.
Surprisingly, after the first episode, the Picard has actually become okay-ish, I will say. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Trigun, which I don't know. They've now moved it to more streaming services than it was. It was just on Amazon, I think, and maybe Crunchyroll. So I think they're trying to promote it more, because there seemed to be like a kind of an exclusive deal going on, but maybe it hasn't done well enough, and they're just trying to see if they can get people to watch it. But I'm seeing it a lot more pop up. I don't know if I'm going to finish it though. Let's describe.
And that's why I was convinced you guys wouldn't watch the rest of it, and I will.
Right.
I thought we had said that there'd be a part 1 and 2 of this, but that's fine.
Dylan did say that, but obviously
okay.
some decisions were made without your consent, I think.
Apparently so. It's fun.
I got a very firm "we're not doing this again" at the end.
Did you?
Yes, I asked both of you.
No, that's not true.
There was a laughing no.
I have receipts. I've got the recordings. We'll see. Okay. But anyway.
Dylan did record us watching these episodes. So.
Mm-hmm.
That way we can make everyone suffer.
Right. Well, okay. What did you think, Dylan, of this adaptation? Actually, let's describe quickly what Trigun is.
Trigun Stampede.
No, just Trigun in general. Tell me if I'm wrong, right? Trigun is a spacefaring civilization trying to colonize a new planet gone wrong. So this very advanced civilization has found a new habitable world, and they sent a bunch of colony ships, the people in stasis to go and set up a new human colony, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Something goes wrong. Most of the humans, or some of the humans, manage to survive and live on the planet, but they don't have all their technology. A whole bunch of stuff's lost, and as a result, the planet isn't really super habitable. It doesn't really have enough water to support human life, and they don't have the machinery or the know-how to turn it into an Earth-like planet. So the entire planet ends up being a Wild West frontier world with 1850s level technology, peppered with high sort of fantasy sci-fi technology that, they manage to kind of keep working so that they can get water and power and all those sort of good things.
I feel like that last part is really what they are trying to achieve in Trigun, and everything before is them getting there. That's the excuse for it. They wanted a Western.
They wanted a Western in space.
That wasn't spacefaring.
Yeah, they wanted something that was very obviously not Star Wars, but more like a kind of Clint Eastwood version of space, I guess.
And they wanted, originally they wanted a lot of mystery involved in it as well. But
this also would have come out at the same time as the original Cowboy Bebop, I think. So people obviously in that sort of mind space, in that headspace.
Yeah. Was the original Trigun not just before Cowboy Bebop?
Just before or just after? Not sure.
Yeah.
I think they're both from the 90s, aren't they?
Yeah, they're both from the same era, that's certain.
I'm looking it up right now. The original Trigun began airing in 1998.
Yeah.
And the original Bebop began airing in 1998.
Sweet. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This might have been
April 1st and
right?
April 3rd.
Yeah, no, this is exactly what it was, right?
Season.
So this is they're probably different companies. And they were like, okay, they're making a space western. We have to make a space western.
And there were two great space westerns.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, both of them very, very good. I think
classic.
Maybe I swing a little more towards Trigun. My preferences,
same.
But I enjoyed both of them.
But I found the opinion generally between people from that era to be split. There are not in that some don't like the other. Most folks like both, but in terms of favorite, it tends to be split between Bebop and Trigun in my experience.
True.
They're both very, very solid works, and they're different enough from each other that they don't compete necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, they're not the same type of show at all, really, except in genre, I guess. But yeah, okay.
My favorite AMV, perhaps of all time, Tainted Donuts, is a Trigun versus Cowboy Bebop AMV.
Cool.
It's shockingly well made, honestly.
I'm sure. Oh, you know the guy that made Dragon Ball Z Abridged?
Mm-hmm.
Kaiser Neko, I think his name is.
Kaiser Neko, yeah.
He used to make Trigun AMVs and such. That's how he got into editing. So yeah, maybe this directly led to that sort of thing. It could be quite cool. Anyway, what else? It's Western in space. It takes place on this planet. It's about a legendary gunman called Vash, and a small group of people that are either after him because of his enormous bounty, or who have become his friends for some reason, or who want to kill him, but also want to be his friend.
That is the Stampede, the humanoid typhoon.
Humanoid typhoon, yeah. So called because he moves through areas and they just get destroyed, right? Usually it's not his intention, generally speaking, to destroy the area.
No. But in fact, at least in the original, there is this whole continuous every time it happens, people keep remarking on how low the death toll was and how the whole city was destroyed, but everyone somehow survived.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That-
Mostly because of the blood, sweat, and tears that Vash would put in.
he has like a goofy competence about him.
Hmm.
That
So Vash is one of the
does-
origins of the hidden badass trope from the 90s. Where your badass would not act like a badass. He'd act like a chill, calm guy or like an idiot.
Right.
But he
Yeah.
was secretly a badass.
Yeah, I mean he's a Yoda character, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So it turns out he's not even human necessarily. I was never clear on exactly what he was in the original series. But he's
We
some
did get
sort
that
of
he
high
was
technology
part plant.
kind of
Mm.
hybrid creature that is essentially immortal, and he has a counterpart, brother organism creature, who is like him but evil and insane.
Fashion knives.
And yeah, the original series had like a great intro song. Didn't have any lyrics. It was just someone playing a guitar to various like kind of images of shooting battles and kind of slowly panning shots across the landscape, which were just
It was
cool.
also-
Yeah.
It was also insanely well animated.
Yeah, especially for the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched the first episode again of the original series just a few days ago, and the sheer amount of work they must have got into it. This is pre CGI at all, and I mean just the way cloaks and not cloaks, like their dusters, the jackets they wear, move is the attention to detail must have killed people, I think.
I absolutely agree.
Especially on what's the small girl? His name?
Millie,
Millie.
Meryl. No, Meryl.
Meryl.
Yeah.
I mean, her
Well,
coat has like a dozen guns, like sewn into the back of it.
All of the derringers.
And
all of
can
them.
you imagine hand drawing that moving all the time? It must have just been insane. But yeah, what else?
The original Trigun. So good. I'm so glad they didn't try and remake it anytime.
No, I mean they'll never get another
Well,
Trigun.
Now that we all agree that is such a great show, we can wrap it up, right? We don't have to talk about anything else.
Oh, but my memory has suddenly come back, and you know, Dylan, they did make another one, and we watched it, and it was pretty bad because it has that early 2000s quality of Nickelodeon animation style about it. That
I
sort
don't-
of yeah.
I couldn't disagree with you more.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think it's bad, but for other reasons. But we'll get there.
Okay.
Yes, you like the animation, right?
Not only do I like the animation, I like the anime.
Right.
mm.
Okay, let me try and say it without being mean. It's 3D animated. There's no cell shading in it, so it's completely 3D. There's no flatness that you associate with anime. I mean by that, they don't have these kind of swashes of color and darkness that go to make that kind of fake 3D effect that we associate generally with
Bad
anime.
3D.
Right?
Mm.
No, not with bad 3D, with anime. In this, it's just kind of that flat curving tone that you see in like a Pixar kind of animated thing, which is probably what they're going for. I think they've sort of worked on some things to make it seem slightly more anime-like, especially the hair, because I know there was quite some outrage at the original style that they had animated Vash's hair with,
Mm-hmm.
which seems ridiculous in regards to well, it seems a ridiculous thing to have changed, yet left everything else the same. But yeah, they went for a completely different style of animation and a tone of story, I would say. So we went from this fanciful kind of comedy, is how Trigun opens up, which isn't too serious, as Dylan was saying. People don't tend to die in it very often. I mean, it does happen, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But Vash is, making sure most of the innocent or the not bad guys, not the good guys per se, because like a lot of people on this show are just kind of neutral in their outlook to the world. But he tries to make sure people don't die just because he's around.
He even tries to make sure bad guys don't die.
That's true as well. Yeah. And most of the first half of it is just kind of a comedy. As a result, it's basically Vash being hunted by Millie and Meryl for whatever reason, and him, getting into increasingly more elaborate kind of hijinks until the preacher character shows up, and at that point it gets a little bit darker, and we get backstory and so on and so forth, and develops into more of like a high concept sci-fi thereafter, which I think kind of I'm not sure it ever really worked for me. I like the first half of Trigun the most, but I can see people getting into that sort of thing, especially if you don't see it coming. That might appeal to you.
When the whole history flashback happens and we realize all of this began as spaceships crashing into a planet, for me that was a very interesting curtain reveal, because there was always this like hint of greater technology and a like wondrous past, but like they never told us flat out we are literally from space.
Yeah.
So I felt like the original Trigun did this slow curtain reveal with clues for anyone who's like trying to observe. That I always felt was masterful in the original.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly better than the approach they took in the reboot, in where they just show you in the first scene of the first episode them in the spaceships. Something going wrong and the spaceships crashing to Earth, right? Like there's no reveal whatsoever. It's a different show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they went in a very different direction with that. Yeah.
And in that regard, like they show you, I mean, there's a character that dies in the first 5 minutes of the show that you don't get to have any attachment to, but from the original show is kind of developed in flashbacks and things. I mean, maybe they can still do that there, but I think having them die already, that takes away a lot of the emotional impact of that death. And then we establish that Knives is evil straight away, and Vash is not entirely human quite early as well. We can see his cybernetic arm, for one thing. He's not trying to hide it. He's also not really trying to hide the fact that he's really, really good with his gun. Like, inhumanly good, right?
Mm.
In the first Trigun, he doesn't even like to use his gun or use his abilities, really, if he can avoid it, because he's just trying to sneak through life, unnoticed most of that series. What do you think, Dill? Is it just us being like a little bit grouchy that they've changed the thing we like?
Yeah. So I think Yesh's tactic is actually really good with this, is to try and not compare it too much to the original, despite the fact that invariably happens.
Okay.
So the perspective I was trying to take when we were watching the first 7 episodes, and that's all we've watched so far, other than Yesh.
There's only 9 though, so
that to try and treat it like a new show, and then to be a little bit more objective as to whether or not, A, what are they trying to do, try and work out what they're trying to do, without saying, oh well, they're doing the original Trigun bad. Rather sit and say, okay, what are they trying to do? Are they doing that well? And when we can get to the end of whether or not they're actually achieving what they're aiming to achieve, then maybe we can go back and say, okay, well, why would they have taken those decisions to change it off of Trigun? So I think, like, this is like
that might be
been
useful.
a huge
And I
thing.
think it might be useful just to think, is there anything that really worked from this new version that stood out to you?
Yeah. And what value do you, and at the end of that as well, what value did you add to the IP, right? Like what value did you add to the family of stories that are going around Gunsmoke and these two immortal brothers that are so integral to the world? I mean, they're the only ones that are still original, at least to my knowledge, right? Still original from the original colonists. So they got to see the whole event take place. They got to spend time as Gunsmoke grew in terms of the colonies. They're almost like, I would say, like connected to the planet itself in a way, rather than almost part of the population.
I can't think of anything that is better except for one thing. I think the knives battle animation was pretty cool in the new 3D version, where we kind of got to see him use his knives to cut a mountain in half.
The Silent Hill barbed wire scene.
Yeah, I mean, it the problem I have with Japanese 3D animation is that it's not as good as American 3D animation or just Western 3D animation, generally speaking, because I don't think they have quite the budget for it that like a Pixar studio or like Disney or something has, or they just don't have the experience with it to make it look as good as those shows. So while like the concept they were trying to execute was really cool, and I appreciate what they did there, it kind of comes off as a first draft kind of thing that you show the studio rather than a completely finished product in quite a lot of the action. And I think that's because they don't know how to use the camera very well in the new show. Whereas obviously, normally in an anime you get, it's like 3 to 5 angles per shot, depending on how high the budget is and how many animators you can have, drawing a thing.
It's very odd given the fact that the director of this version, as far as I'm aware, also like spent a lot of time as a storyboarder as well.
Yeah.
Storyboarders, that is what they do. They get that.
But you know the thing,
shots.
I've seen some tours of these animation studios in Japan, and they did use a Japanese 3D animation studio that has done a number of things. But they don't have the computing power, I think, to render the scenes fast enough to the point where the director could just request changes willy-nilly, so to speak. So there's probably quite a lot of deliberation in and kind of conservative editing in determining, like, okay, this is an angle that we know will work, even if maybe this experimental angle might be like fun, but we don't have time to render them both, so we have to choose the safer option. And that's kind of why I think it's boring to watch visually, especially like the action scenes compared to the original, because there's so much movement in Trigun. There's this one scene in the new one where he's running through the town, kind of jumping over buildings and whatnot,
diving underneath pipes and stuff.
Yeah. And you can see they've kind of tried to do what happened in the original town scene, but
yes, yeah.
they don't. It's a trimmed down version of that. Like, there's none of the little gags that happen
Yeah,
that you could, individually add by hand in the original thing. And
see, like the animation that they used in that was the quality of the animation for me in Stampede, the new one, for that scene was good. For like it was, I didn't have a problem with it. The thing that I had a problem with was that, and Yesh and I have different opinions on this, which is great. But the problem that I have is that in the original, they were going very much for physical humor, where Vash would stumble his way through this town, and like very. When I say physical humor, I mean it like very seriously. It's like old school physical humor.
slapstick, yeah.
It's very slapstick.
Laurel
Now,
Hardy kind of.
now
things
I would
going on there.
argue that the lesser point to argue here is whether or not CGI is good at slapstick humor, like that physical humor at all. That's a smaller point for me than the fact that if this is a new series and they're going in a new direction and they weren't going to try and redo the scene as per the original, why did they kind of they almost aimed for that slapstick but missed, right?
Yeah.
It didn't get it. I would argue it didn't get pulled off. Now it
Okay,
was
yeah.
very kinetic. It was very action packed.
I mean,
And
I
when we
think,
were watching it,
Yeah.
oh sorry,
no, I'm just. That's what maybe I'm not articulating correctly. They were certainly trying to capture that spirit, but I just think they didn't know how, and
Yeah.
they didn't have the time, or the resources to just fiddle with it until they had achieved that.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like to me.
So
Like
so-
if you gave them another 2 years and enough money, I think it could work. Also,
Yeah,
I think several of the characters don't have personality because of the way the animation is done.
So I think maybe like we should give Yesh a chance to say, like,
Yes.
let's take that scene for example, right? Yesh, you like that scene, right? You're quite
The running away scene in the town.
yeah, in the town where he was trying to avoid all the townspeople trying to capture him.
Yep, I
Whilst we
quite
were
enjoyed
watching him, you expressed that you really enjoyed it. I can see why you enjoyed it. So, take it away. Why did you enjoy that scene?
So, before I begin talking about Stampede, let me just start with something because I think I need to preface this by saying that Trigun has been either my favorite anime of all time or like top 3 for the majority of what I consider my life.
Same.
Since I started watching anime, Trigun is the thing I suggested to other people to get into anime. And I'm talking about the 1993 one, not Stampede or anything.
It's the one I always, if I'm introducing someone to like anime that's important to me, it's the first. That and GTO is obviously on the list, and I invariably we will watch it together, which is why we've watched it so many times. So yeah, same.
I had Trigun on my music playlist. I literally bought 3 sets of the DVDs because I kept losing them. I had a ripped version of Trigun from my own DVDs on my music playlist that I would play in the background while studying at varsity. I literally have been through the Trigun series more than 80 times. The anime, the full anime. And I guarantee you it's more than 80. I watch it almost every year. Then again, I also watch Scrubs almost every year. Maybe my taste is not so great.
Yesh
Scrubs is
is
great.
probably about 100. Yesh is about, by that tally, is about 130 years old. by the way.
Correct. That seems right.
But I'm listening to a bunch of people who watched Fumofu tell me that Full Metal Panic is a bad anime. That's my problem. The new Trigun is not the old Trigun. And I know you guys are going to tell me, yes, you understand that. But let me
I don't understand your analogy. Explain that to me. Fumafu
Yes,
is
that's what I'm trying to
Fullmetal
explain.
Panic's comedy series, right?
So they both are adapting from the same source material, the current Trigun and the old Trigun.
Yes, from the
But
manga.
their takes are very different.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that the original Trigun took that and in an 80s, 90s anime fashion made a action comedy. Where Vash is a goofball, the preacher is a goofball, and everyone else is more of the straight man. Specifically, Meryl Streep is the straight man to our goofballs.
Are you sorry? I just want to check. You're saying that the the original anime adaptation of the manga has changed quite a lot. They changed quite a lot to adapt it to the anime. Right?
The characterization of
1998.
Vash in particular, but not the preacher. The preacher was
Yeah.
a bit goofy in the manga.
Yeah, because I will admit I've never read the manga, and I definitely will look into the manga now.
I don't like the manga, but I'm starting to realize part of the reason I don't like the manga is because I watched the anime. I loved the anime, and I went into the manga wanting the anime.
I mean, I
But the
I
manga
read the
is
first
not
volume of it, and it seemed quite similar, but it was such a long time ago.
The problem is that the manga focuses on something else. It focuses on Vash's trauma.
Right.
So, I think this adaptation of the anime, this new adaptation, is Full Metal Panic.
Okay.
It's the same source material, but they're not doing the jokes.
I'd like to pick that analogy apart a bit, if I might. So, Fumafu, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is not like it's a different interpretation of the manga.
The same material, no.
It's just the funny bits that they didn't put into the first series because they wanted to streamline it.
And also because putting those jokes in the middle of super serious stuff would ruin the tone of the anime.
So, are you saying that this is like the first season of Full Metal Panic? It's just they've taken out the jokes, so to speak, to make it a more dramatic retelling.
Well, okay, they've reassigned the jokes because Meryl now has all of the jokes on her shoulders.
and
And the adaptation's not too great on that,
no,
but they've taken the humor out of Vash himself to specifically give us a focus on something that I think is vital.
yeah,
And this new take does it very well. If I can not insult, but like if I can be negative about the original Trigun in one particular aspect, it's that we don't have an antagonist for 60% of the series. Then we have the Gung Ho Guns who don't appear to have a real connection to Vash, except they hate him. And like when you were describing the series, Chris, you were even like, he's being chased by these people who do this and these people who do that.
correct, yeah,
But like no like focused antagonist, no us versus them.
yeah. I mean, but
And-
that's a general complaint of anime.
Let me finish though. And then in the last 3 episodes-ish, we get introduced to this guy that created an arm out of Vash's broken off arm that he shot off just to hurt Vash because he hates him so much. And also he's trying to end the entire world. And also he lives on a farm in the middle of the desert, even though there's no water all around. Also, he's the ultimate bad guy and he's been a part of everything from the beginning. Also, he's Vash's brother.
Yes.
So yeah, if I have a negative about the original Trigun, it's that I was in an action comedy and then my brother's a mass murdering genocidal freak.
I hate to
Who's
see it,
superpowered.
but I hate to say it, but Yash does have a point, right?
And then we Kamehameha against each other until we agree that we can't Kamehameha enough. Unless the power of friendship gives me my friend's cross.
So-
Then I can beat my brother's Kamehameha with my Kamehameha and the cross.
So your point, to sum it up, is that this is a much more rounded, more well-structured version of the story
No.
because
It's failing at a bunch of storytelling, unfortunately.
okay.
But
But what I mean is that it's more coherent because
it's definitely more coherent.
I think it's quite
firstly.
clear in the original Trigun that they didn't know where they were going because that's just how
I
the author
disagree.
works, right?
I disagree with both of those takes.
Let me just get through this then.
No, yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah.
In this one, they introduce us to Knives and Knives' bandit crew, and show us something vital and important that was true in the manga but was never explained in the anime previously. The reason why technology is decreasing, the reason why populations are decreasing, and the main reason why the desert is taking over and everyone is suffering
Yeah.
is Knives.
Yeah. No.
He's taking tech away from people. We find that out at the very end of the original Trigun, where he's standing amongst all of the plants he's stolen in a room.
Right.
And he is in a super high-tech location, and everyone else is living like 1800s Wild West fantasies.
Uh-huh.
But in this, we get to see the tech more openly. We get to see that more people are aware of the tech.
Yeah, I mean that's
And
what
we
I'm
get
saying,
to
right?
see-
You get to see the build up more. I think what happened what must have happened with the author originally is he didn't know entirely how the story was going to end
Was going to end.
because it was probably a weekly manga, right? Or I don't know if it was.
It was in
light novel
Shonen
or
Jump,
something
so it
different.
would have been a weekly something.
So I mean, famously, like with Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama had no idea what was going to happen week to week, right? So I imagine it's probably quite common for that sort of stuff to play out in this sort of comic book industry thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this, we obviously, the series has ended, we know how it goes, so they've threaded in more of the story more early on, and we get to see more of the thoughts of Knives and like the machinations of the general plot around
Overall,
the destruction of the ships and so on and so forth.
Also, by coincidence, we then get a fixed antagonist and a set of antagonists on the other side. Now, one of the things they decided to do with this, being that we now know who our antagonists are, and they are horrifically threatening in everything they do, is they also took some of the comedy out of Vash and the Preacher. Now,
I've seen
in the
most of it,
original
yeah.
manga, they had some slapstick humor, but it wasn't as much as the anime would let you believe.
Sure.
But there was some humor in them. But what they want to show us with this telling is I've noticed that Vash is a lot more traumatized right from the get-go. In the original anime, we only had like 2 episodes where he was like running away and refused to be Vash anymore. In this, it's literally obvious. He's running away from his name, he's running away from his family, and he's running away from everything he knows.
Right.
He is a child on the run. And the Preacher is from the get-go revealed to be a bit of a bad guy. And in the original, he was just a bit of a slight shyster, a bit of a trickster. He was like a money-grubbing priest guy for a while. And then we find out he's working with the gung-ho guns. And in this one, he's a guy whose family was, whose life was taken from him. And he is being forced to work with them, but he's also kind of working against them. And they threatened his orphanage.
Yeah, he's a
And
Yakuza.
Andy's a 12-year-old Yakuza
exactly.
stuck in an adult body.
Which adds
Yes,
to the
sir.
sins that Knives must answer for. So he's super angry and super hurt. But also, the fact that he's young means that there's like an excuse for him to learn from Vash in this one. Does that make sense? To suddenly change
Sure.
his ways.
Viewed from a different angle, it seems that maybe a different writer came in and was like, well, we need more drama and we need characters to have more conflict. So let's just insert some things that weren't there. Let's make Vash a more damaged character. Let's make this guy more tragic. Let's have the death scenes be more poignant. And
I personally find the death scenes of the old one more poignant, but once again, I'm a bitch. Ignore me.
more dramatic. How about that? Make them more dramatic. Like
When Millie dies in the original, I was like devastated.
Millie doesn't die in the original, does she?
Someone dies. Doesn't Millie?
Nicholas D. Wolfwood.
yeah,
dies.
Nicholas
Nikki dies. My bad. When Nikki died, it was
80
like,
times.
so soul ruining. Well, look. After he died, she like gave him the cross and fucked off. So
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. Yeah, she did exit the story at that point. Yeah. So yeah. Do you mind if I just
counteract all of the things.
No. I'm not. No. That's no, because that's not my goal. I do have comments on it that I feel.
I'm not saying
valid.
I'm offended or anything. I just
Yeah.
feel like if you think I'm wrong, go ahead and tell me.
No, well,
It is my goal.
let me add. Yeah, it's not mine. Let me add my comment to it, and then we can just discuss it. So this might be critique. It doesn't necessarily take away from what you're saying.
Mhm.
Firstly, when we say that they've taken the humor out of Vash, I find it very difficult to in the new series. I find it very difficult to accept when they're obviously animating scenes where they're attempting physical humor, and we could go back and watch those horrible takes, but they miss so far that it actually, you almost ignore it. This is a point that I feel
Just to add to that point, Dylan,
Yeah.
to me, it doesn't feel like it's intentionally a funny scene. It kind of feels like they're trying to animate like a Mission Impossible chase. But it comes off badly, and that's the comedy of it, right? It's like, what if Tom Cruise fell over a lot more? Rather
I
than...
just think they're animating Vash as a badass that's trying not to appear as a badass.
Yeah, but there are like the point is it's like there is a lot of physical acting in the new animation, in
Yes.
the readaptation of Ash. It is just very bad, and so it doesn't provoke the same humor.
Emotion.
No, the same
Oh.
humor.
Humor.
It, like it doesn't provoke anything. That's the point. Is that it's an attempt at humor that fails completely, and that's the nuanced critique that I want to add to that.
Mm-hmm.
Is
See,
it
I
more
feel-
serious? Yes, but it
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
feels a little scattered in terms of intention.
I feel like they're trying to make us feel like Vash is pathetic. Like he is a broken, damaged individual who is pathetic.
I think the original came off better in that regard, though. Because you got the idea that this guy was kind of just... He had given up on life in the original. I mean, all he wanted to do was, like, drink and womanize and kind of just, you know, wander through life.
There was, like, a very quiet trauma to it. But, look, let's go to, like, the first sort of action scene that he has where he runs out of bullets. And he spends, I don't know, 30 seconds running around,
Screaming his head off.
crying, screaming in a very high-pitched tone with very exaggerated gestures for someone to give him a 22 bullet, please.
Mhm.
Right? It
A
was an
pathetic
obvious...
crying child.
Yeah, I feel like you are reading like... If that is what you get, that was not their intention. Their intention was for that to be
wasn't
slapstick
funny.
humor. No,
Yeah.
their intention was for it to be... That's what I'm trying to say. They're not doing it well. The intention is slapstick humor. It's so hyper... If it was a crying child and they were trying to portray this guy as being, like, disempowered, it would not be so dramatic to start putting it into the spectrum of what would be slapstick humor, but in this case it failed. Right? It's cringeworthy.
It is
It doesn't-
cringeworthy, I agree.
It doesn't make me think he's pathetic. It makes me think that he's putting on a performance, an act, but that it doesn't move me at all. Whereas in the original, it's almost seamless. It's like he is putting on the performance of that comedic style that he has, but it's done with charisma and charm, and then wins me over with it.
So yeah, it's
That's
very
fine.
clearly an act in the original.
It's very
So-
clearly an act in this as well, though. In this remake,
But
that's
I
what
mean,
I'm trying to say.
just in
It's
that
just a
in
bad
that
one.
scene, for instance, it's not really, because like he actually is in a predicament at that point, right?
Yeah, but
in the original, whenever he runs out of bullets, it's almost intentional, because we see a few times in the original where he's kind of just like casually running past people stealing their bullets. He always finds a way to like make a situation work to his advantage by the end. This one, he was kind of at the mercy of random chance. And
yeah, but no, hold on a sec. What I'm saying here is that the way they've set that up,
yeah.
the animation of this new one,
Mm.
it's not that this was it is obvious that it's hyper exaggerated, and that the intention is to bring about physical humor. The problem is that it falls flat. The
Yeah.
reading that is him being pathetic and sad and asking for a bullet please is not the reading that I get, because it's too cringeworthy, like cringeworthily performance.
The trouble
based.
there, right, is the closer we get to real life Japanese acting, perhaps the worse the acting kind of becomes. Unfortunately, it's like a Final Fantasy cutscene with the
I did feel that.
kind of, you know, the exaggerated like hand movements and, you know, your face down, your palms kind of thing to convey like the most universal of feelings to the most general audience. That's kind of how I felt about the acting.
It's like
throughout
3-year-old
most of it.
acting, in other words, what you
Yeah,
say. Like,
to
really
convey it
immature
to
acting.
like the person holding the little like console in their hands, right? This person is sad. Even a 5-year-old boy must realize that, right? It's almost like a Pokemon sprite acting.
I feel like that's affording this a lot of benefit of the doubt that I wouldn't otherwise do. But I
No,
I do
I
feel
mean,
like we've
but
hung around here for a while as well.
yeah, I don't know if it's intentional though. I just think that's. I think they think that kind of works, and maybe it does for certain audiences, but it's a much younger audience. And
I have reservations. I have reservations, but I think we should move on because otherwise it's going to be a point that gets way too belabored.
Sure. I mean, but that's the point of the argument. Anyway, what other points are there in its favor? It's shorter. It's half the length. Unfortunately, the bits that it cuts out are the bits that add flavor to the story. You don't get many side arcs or anything. It just it seems to be, having only watched 7 of them, barreling through the main storyline. There are very few detours that kind of add depth to the world. But that being said, it's a simpler world, and we're told exactly what the world is. So maybe you don't need that.
Right off the bat, yeah.
Look, I don't think that's necessarily a mistake to get rid of the mystery. But
I don't think it's a mistake. It's a different choice. Personally, I was offended by that. But if I can just let go of how much I love the original, why am I offended by that? If this is a different telling, why am I offended by that? If they do something else, it's fine.
I understand that from a philosophical point of view, and that's a really good bit of advice for living your life. But I don't think that's a good way to approach art in general.
The original had 26 episodes to tell its story, and this has 12.
That's what I'm saying. It's half the length, yeah. Less than half the length.
Less than half the length.
And it's also shorter episodes, because episodes used to be longer. So yeah, there's three minutes shorter episodes than they used to be. And it's more than half the amount of episodes that it had. So there is just less story here. But it is more condensed and it goes through it and things are more obvious, so it's not necessarily a flaw of it. You can tell a good story like this even in a movie format. So it is possible to tell that story. I just think it detracts from the general feeling. But the point that sometimes gets made a lot recently is you need to treat something as its own thing. And I kind of think that's like BS, really. If something exists as reference to something, it's not reasonable to expect the public in particular not to reference that thing, especially when it's applicable to the story itself. So because Trigun exists in other media and a previous series has existed and is regarded highly and has been spoken of a lot, I don't think you can just think of it as its own thing. Even if you really, really try, we've all seen the original. We all know how that made us feel, and
all of us, yes.
You'd have to cut yourself off completely from yourself to not evaluate it in that regard. Now, if you haven't seen this and you've never heard of Trigun before, you'll feel differently. I still don't think you'll think it's a particularly good show, but I can see how someone could enjoy the ride, which is why I really wanted us to compare it to that Kaina show, which is another 3D animation that came out at the same time, and I don't think it's super high quality or anything, and maybe there is like a better story hiding behind it in some sort of manga or something, but it's kind of fun just to explore this random world that this show's going through. And if you're watching this for the first time, yeah, go ahead, watch it. And then maybe watch the original, and then you'll enjoy the original even more. But if you do it the other way around, I don't see how you could enjoy this more than the original.
More than the original, no. but it's a good show. It's an okay show.
I think the animation is kinetic. I'm in Yesh's camp where I don't think they did that badly. I think it's kinetic. I think it conveys action very well. I still am of the opinion that they mixed up their intentions with it, right? Because I did try, and I think I disagree. Like, maybe not disagree, but I feel like I can view it from the lens of it being its own thing. The problem for me is it coherent? If it's going to take on a more somber tone, why attempt the physical comedy? It's not a good move. If it's gonna take a more somber tone, that doesn't mean that they need what's in my opinion a bad score, right, throughout the series. They can have then a different score, but for me they fell short on their score. They're
it's not great.
None of it is moving for me. The op was good, or at least it was entertaining.
Low energy compared to the original, but it does suit the tone of the show.
Did you like the score, the general score, not just the ops?
So the problem is, on the general score, I think it's pretty average, maybe even slightly below average.
Yeah.
I think that's something that will get cleaned up for the DVD release, but certainly for the TV release, the stuff that we're watching, the score is either too low in the background when it's kinetic, or it's like not very energetic when the scenes are getting us to an action scene.
Yeah.
I don't think it's horrific. I just don't think it's. The problem is the original had this thing that amped you up as you got into an action scene, and these guys aren't doing that in this one.
Yeah, but we're coming from the position of not going comparing to the original.
No. What is the point of that, right? What is the point of not comparing it?
No,
because it is a different take. It is a different interpretation.
Yeah, but what's
of
the point
source
of not
material.
comparing it to a thing that exists? It's like saying,
I
mustn't compare the Lord of the Rings movies to the book, right?
No. Chris. It's not to say that there shouldn't be a comparison. It's to say that first we look at what it is, right? Is it good, bad, or mid, right? So I think we can agree it's not that great. It's not like terrible and takes you out of the series completely in terms of the score. Once we've done that, then we can go to the original and say, hey, the original was done so well that when you now juxtapose these two together, you would say, oh, the score is shit.
Yeah, okay, right, I get that. I get your intention. I just don't think there's a point to it, right?
There is.
Because
Judging a
you're
thing
going
on
to-
its own merits is important.
No, not if it's a thing that's related to another thing.
That's
Then
totally
it-
false.
No, that's the point of comparison. You can't...
Yes, that is the point of comparison, but putting the comparison before we judge what it is wrong as well.
No, because if you compare something only to itself, it's always a 10 out
So
of 10.
Chris, in my opinion, the original series is a worse telling of Star Trek than TNG. Does that mean that the original series shouldn't exist? We can't say it's good, so it must be thrown away.
No, it just means it's worse than TNG-ish.
Right, so all three of us agree that this is worse than the original series of Trigun. Can we stop comparing it now?
No, that's not the point, right? It's
You've
that-
already won. We all agree it's worse.
Well,
It's not about winning. It's about saying, I don't think people should go into anything with that mindset, because it's like giving the studio or whoever's doing the adaptations too easy of a time.
Why are we supposed to give them a hard time exactly?
It's so that we don't get trash.
This isn't trash.
It's very close to being trash.
It's not, though.
I don't know how to respond to either of these things.
No. Yes, just to not to labor on this show in particular, but
Okay.
if we just give an example, like say Rings of Power, right? We can agree, not a very good show.
But that's because it's badly written.
It's badly written, but it's actually not that bad in and of itself. Again, if you go and look at it for its own merits and you ignore everything else around it, It's
If
pretty
you
good fantasy
pretend
show.
J.R.R. Tolkien
It
did
doesn't
not
exist,
ever,
right?
doesn't exist, he never wrote anything, and there's never been any IP from him
If
ever.
that were true and I watched it, I said, oh, that's pretty good. I give it a 7 out of 10.
This is an interesting fantasy.
Weird, like female dominatrix elf does things. Happy with it. Cool, whatever. But that's not where it comes from. It comes from set material, and we have a number of comparisons to make to it that have led us to swing in a direction of bad. And I can't just look at something on its own merits in that way. Like, I'm willing to entertain it intellectually, but I'm not willing to say, as a whole, it's good. Because maybe if this is the first Trigun, I'd be, oh, it's fine, it's 6 out of 10, whatever. Go ahead, watch it if you want. But other Trigun exists, so it's not a 6 out of 10.
So here's the interesting part for me, because if we're going to start talking about Tolkien, I didn't read the books first. I watched the movies, the Peter Jackson films first. And I loved them at the time. I thought they were amazing.
Yeah.
Then I read the books,
them, yeah.
fell in love with the books, and very quickly realized those movies are hella nothing like the books.
Well, that's not entirely true.
No, it's true. And I was very grateful that I had watched the movies prior to reading the books, because I could have a good opinion of both simultaneously without it being conflicting.
But Dylan, I mean, I read the books first, and then I watched the movies, and I still like them. I think that's because they're good.
That's fine for you.
You know?
I know myself, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have appreciated the movie. I read the books, The Hobbit. Subsequently, The Hobbit came out, and I watched one movie of The Hobbit and decided that I needed to stay very far away from that.
That's because that was a bad
series.
movie. I mean,
We've got
granted,
different-
the adaptation, right, is different, but I think the thing is, right, the reason for me anyway was that the spirit of the show, of the movies, the original trilogy, kind of captured some of the essence of the book. Whereas, The Hobbit was just a cash grab. and I'm not saying Trigun has that kind of quality, but there is a bit of cash grabbiness about it. Kind of, we've got this really legendary property and it's due a reboot, so let's give it to this 3D animation studio and see what they can do with it. Whereas Legend of the Galactic Heroes, another legendary property, was handled with some love and attention, and they did many of the same things that they did with Trigun. It's 3D animated, it's not a darker tone, but it's more moody, the lighting is more dramatic, and they shortened it to much shorter seasons. Like, it's gone from like 30 episodes a season to 12 or something like that, right? But it's still good. In fact, I'd say it's better, because it's just, watching the original is a real task, because it's 150 episodes of show to get through. And why couldn't that have been the choice for this? It's not like they had to make this. Maybe they did have to make this or lose the rights to it or something, right? We'll never know.
I think this conversation, where this conversation in particular has pushed me, is into the camp that I would sit with other IP where folks have had issues with how they've changed characters and the rest, which is, maybe the show isn't for us, maybe the show is for a younger audience or a newer audience. I still feel like it has flaws that are not just in my head. But I think for someone who hasn't watched Trigun before, they could watch this and enjoy it. I think if you have watched Trigun and loved Trigun, those two combined, maybe this would, unless you are of a very, unless you can do exactly what Yesh has done, which is sit and see it in its own light, I think you're going to maybe struggle with it. But if you have watched the new one first, maybe go watch the original as well, and then either you're going to enjoy both or you're going to enjoy one, but it's unlikely that you're not going to enjoy either.
Mm-hmm. It's just that for people nowadays, the original Trigun is effectively unavailable. The remaster was 720p. The original was 480p. People are just not going to get past the beginning song. They're going to see some pixels, turn off the TV, and walk away.
That's true.
It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know how common that perception actually is, Yesh. I mean...
Let me tell you about some stats then. 13,825 people have watched Trigun Stampede and given it a 7 or higher on my anime list. On Crunchyroll, 13,400 people have given it a full 5 stars out of 5.
Okay.
It is crushing it with new people.
It's true, it is quite highly rated. I did see that.
I mean, just
Meanwhile,
in terms of internet
Trigun
culture,
hasn't
7 out of
sold
10
a
isn't
manga
very
book.
good.
A 7 out of 10 is not very good,
Oh.
okay?
Well,
Average
it's not
rating,
terrible.
the average
it's not
rating of
bad.
seasonal anime is 6.5.
Okay,
Yeah.
It is above average. How's that?
Yeah.
sure.
Cool.
I'm willing to agree it is better than some of the trash. But
That's what I'm saying.
What
My
is-
point
what
is
is-
that it's an
the
okay
point
show.
what's for the point of the rating? You know?
I'm scared to ask what the original is rated at. Let's not look it up.
The original is rated at 7.85, but obviously there have been no votes in like a decade.
A million years. A million years. I think this is definitely going to be a show that either people. Well, actually, no, that's not true.
There's been so many anime reboots in the last 2 years, and I think this is just one where there's been the least attention given to a project. I mean, even Invader Girl Rom? I don't know what the English title is. Urusei Yatsura
Urusei Yatsura, yeah.
has an incredible reboot going on. And that the premise, it comes from an inherently sexist, out-of-date idea that they've somehow made work in 2023 that can be enjoyable. This doesn't have value in the same way. It's not something you're gonna remember, in a year. Whereas you've remembered the original series for decades.
Okay, admittedly, a show with less than half the runtime and no significant ramp up on it is definitely worth less than the 26 episode original run. Yes, I agree.
Here's a question that might be important. If doing a Trigun remake, right? Okay, so here's two questions. Should they have attempted a Trigun remake / reimagining? And then the second question is, how would you go about making that good in comparison to the original?
I think absolutely yes.
Okay.
And I don't know how you make the second one. I don't make anime.
I literally
that's
think
a bit
it
of a
would
cop
be-
out. You consume enough anime and that you know what you
I mean,
like.
I can say what I think they should have done it like, and I have said that. I think they should have tried what they did, with Galactic Heroes, or what they did with Urusei Yatsura, or what's another one?
So they did do what they tried with Urusei Yatsura.
Why
They
can't they
reimagined
just?
it in a
Why
modern
couldn't they
world.
also just make Trigun Kai? Right? Just go in, make it into a 4K version of the original. Update the character model slightly, tell essentially the same story of a slightly shorter
Because
episode run.
I guarantee you, no matter what they did, they would get huge backlash if they tried to make the original exactly as the original. Because someone would have cut something, a word would have changed here.
I tend
Millie
to
would
agree.
have had an expanded personality, because she literally was written as a reason for the preacher to change, and that's it.
Yeah, I
You're
tend
gonna
to
get
agree.
backlash with anything, but I mean,
There's lots of problems.
On the other hand, you do something like this, and it's kind of a pointless exercise,
Well,
it's not
no,
moving
it's
anything
gained
forward.
literally hundreds of thousands of new people watching it.
Which
It's
is
literally
which
a
is
popular and watched show.
It's successful, yeah.
sort of
Well,
successful.
let's talk about the original Trigun's success. Do you know it's considered not so great because Cowboy Bebop crushed it?
That's fine, but it's a
Which
cult
is sad,
classic.
because I think it's better than Cowboy Bebop.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah.
You can call it a cult classic.
We've all said that. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the most popular thing in the world. As I said, this is not memorable, nor will it be remembered.
I mean, there's a problem with all anime at the moment that's like that. When you get 400 anime a season, it's difficult to remember one.
That's very true.
But nevertheless, some do stand out. And the Trigun was one of them. Back in the 90s, and people still remember it fondly.
Yeah, I think.
Every season there is an anime that stands out. This could have been that anime, but it will not be.
Okay, I agree it is not a 10 out of 10 anime. I fully agree with you there.
Probably not even top 10 anime of the season.
I don't know. The season's been pretty bad, guys.
That is a Dylan opinion.
I really
pretty
haven't
average.
enjoyed anything else in the season too much except for Eminence in the Shadow. And you disagree with
which is
me
not
on
from the
Eminence of the
season.
Shadow a lot.
Yeah. Look.
Eminence in the Shadow is from the same season as Trigun, isn't it?
No.
Am I crazy? I might be
It's from the
crazy.
previous season.
Guys. There wasn't that much anime out in the 90s compared to what we had.
Yeah,
today.
there were 6 anime released in that season.
So
Come on.
and for all of us, we were much younger folks then, and this would have been like seminal works.
Right.
This now, I don't know. I'm sure it'll be someone's favorite anime. I don't know if it's as groundbreaking as the original, but I don't even know if that's if there's any point to that specific question. I don't know if they should have tried a remake, but then again, I know that I have a particular fondness for keeping the original stuff the original. So I wouldn't be a good marker for that. I have no idea how you would reimagine Trigun to even remotely compete with the original. That
Chris.
to me would be a
Yes.
titanic undertaking.
Yes, yeah, I agree with you.
That would be like. But with that said, I agree. Going in a completely different direction with a different story is probably your best approach to getting a good, maybe not better or even comparable series to try again. I do think the series has flaws that undermine that severely, and I've aired them. We won't talk about them anymore. I think Yesh has convinced me that it's not a terrible series.
Not a horrific trash waste.
Not a horrific trash thing.
It's not torture to sit down and watch
Yeah.
medium anime.
It's torture.
It is torture to sit down and watch. I disagree with that.
So it's torture. It's torture, but for me,
Yeah.
right? Because of who because I am me. It's
And-
not.
and-
I wouldn't say that it would be torture for everyone.
And just in terms of popularity-ish, right? It's 19th on my anime list of the season, after
Correct.
the second season of Nagatoro and between. I don't want to get hurt, so I maxed out my defense skill.
Yeah,
It's
but
just
how many times have we
relatively
looked? How many
popular.
times have we looked at the popularities on those lists and gone, yeah, I don't see how this thing is that popular. This thing
Also,
is not that popular.
Eminence in the Shadow is this season.
It's from last season, actually.
It's from last season, but it's airing this season.
Sure, so is One Piece, though.
Yes. So there's a season of One Piece.
One
this
Piece is
season.
not from the season, though. One Piece is from the 90s.
I said I'm watching this and Eminence from
I
this season's
understand,
anime.
but it's just not from the season.
Okay, but
That's
it's
the
airing
last
this season.
Sure, it's continuing to air. I accept that.
Okay, so from the anime I'm watching this season, which includes The Eminence in the Shadow, I forget what the original point was, but Eminence in the Shadow is airing this season, and I'm watching them both at the same time.
I understand that you're watching that. That's fine. It's a better show than this. and I'm happy you're watching something that's better than this. Anyway.
for the sake of Rav and Piso, maybe we should
This land is built on.
wrap this up before we sellotape ourselves.
Safe to say, it couldn't achieve the dizzying heights of Buddy Daddies this season.
Oh my
As
god!
by comparison,
I haven't watched any of that, and I don't want to. Please don't make me.
I'm not gonna. It's
It's
terrible.
weirdly popular. I don't know with who.
I assume, small children who need to be adopted by
That's-
gangsters.
Let's just be grateful that there's something for everyone.
Sure, they must be with 40 anime a season.
It's great.
It is great. I wish.
Except me, there just hasn't been anything really good for a long time for me.
Dylan,
And I'm the one left out. Well,
I need to either get you high or drunk, and then we're gonna watch Eminence in the Shadow.
you're gonna
If you just lower your standards. If you just lower your standards enough. It's great.
I just yeah. You just need to be broken in a bit more, Dylan. That's what needs to happen, right?
What, more Stockholm syndrome?
More
Okay,
Stockholm
okay.
syndrome, yeah.
Yeah.
Then you'll
Just-
be in the Ghibli Park taking inappropriate pictures.
You know,
You need
on
to
that
dig through the cringe.
comparison note, if I watch enough completely horrendous things, like a mediocre thing would seem like this amazing piece of art to me. So
Exactly. Yes.
that
Hello,
kinda-
I'd like to remind you, I was introduced into this podcast as the man that reads all of the light novels from Japan.
That's true.
All of the horrific and terrible and miserable things.
Okay.
But I mean, that is just saying his
Standards are low.
standards are low. So,
No, I don't like where this conversation is going.
So I enjoy Eminence in the
Withdrawal.
Shadow.
Oh dear. Okay, we'll come back to something similar to this in about a year or two, I guess. When
Okay,
we
so
get
we're
the
not-
Harui
we're not-
reboot
We're not
happening.
finishing Trigun, is what we're saying.
I'm not finishing Trigun.
I would love to finish Trigun. In fact, regardless of what the answer here is, I'm going to.
Yes, just gonna finish Trigun.
Okay.
Well,
In-
if
in-
no one's
in
gonna
totality,
drink
though-
with me and suffer with me, then maybe I will not. I don't know.
We can do that with something else. We can do something with something maybe we enjoy. How about that, Dylan?
With something we enjoy, sure.
Yeah.
Guys, there's only 4 episodes left. Just get to the end with me.
That's an hour and a half of my life I'll never get back.
That-
Thank you.
I'm not
that's
opposed.
an hour of your life, and maybe just a tiny bit
There
more.
are like 12 anime I like this season. I could just watch one of them instead.
I'm not opposed to the idea. Yes, we can do that, but we would have
Look,
to. We'd have
I've
to
said
have
the story
alcohol
is being restructured in an interesting way. Maybe Vash himself is frustrating, but if they land the story well, it could actually redeem a lot of the show.
there.
Anyway,
Yeah.
4 out of 10.
8 out of 10.
I feel like
Dylan doesn't give.
I don't give ratings. The problem with this one is, just like last week.
How
Look-
about this, Dylan? On the scale of best.
Oh no! Wait! If you like characters being reimagined as yakuza in skinny jeans and cringy physical acting that is not in fact humorous, and good kinetic CG with in terms of action, then this would be for you. If not,
That seems correct.
okay, cool. If
Right.
if not, then stay away maybe.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. This has been our review of Trigun, the new Stampede. Ciao for now, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.